Hi, everyone. I'm Kelly Thompson, and I'm a leadership coach. And I have, again, a special guest today. I have with me Nadia Ahrens. And Nadia has been a wealth of information for me. In fact, many of the topics that I may have been talking about lately, whether it's, confidence, how to be confident, really getting in touch with yourself. I mean, a lot of just the tips and things have been influenced by this amazing woman I have here today. So Nadia Ahrens is a psychotherapist. She is an empath expert, and we're going to talk more about what in the world that means. And she's a transformational life coach, and I am so happy to have her with us. So Nadia, I didn't do you justice. So do you want to expand a little bit more about you? Tell me about your family. Tell us about exactly what else you do, because you do so many amazing things.
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on today. And what a beautiful welcome. My heart is full. So I am, yes, a psychotherapist, empath expert, and transformational life coach. I'm a New Yorker who lives in Seattle. So this might have an explicit rating. I'm just going to forewarn you because I do like to drop the F-bomb. I live in Seattle with my husband and my twin daughters. I also have a son who died 4 years ago, Jack, who is really the reason I do everything that I do. And so when I think of courage and confidence, and when I think of, oh, I can't do this, I think of him and how I could get myself up off the floor and not only transform my life, but I'm here to help women transform their lives as well. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
That's awesome. Do you want to talk a little bit more about the buckets of things that you do? Because I think it is wildly fascinating how they all kind of come together. And if you'd like, you can tell us just a little bit about your story about, how you transitioned from psychotherapy to now really expanding all of those amazing things.
Yeah, so I've been a psychotherapist since 2000, and in 2016 in February, well, let me go back a couple of months. In October of 2015, my husband got laid off from his corporate job at Microsoft, and we took that as an opportunity to go travel to Thailand, children, and have an experience. So we went on this amazingly died unexpectedly, and I won't go into all the details because it would be a whole different interview and I would just be a mess. I obviously stopped seeing clients. The whole year was pretty much a blur, but I want to say that around 4 or 6 months later was when I started to get myself up off the floor. And at one moment, I was on the floor of his bedroom just crying and not wanting to do this and feeling the worst pain I'd ever felt in my entire life and will ever feel in my entire life. And I just remember going, I don't want to do this. I just want to die. And maybe I'll just live a passively suicidal life waiting to die so that I could be with him again. And so the next moment I had an image of my grandmother, who at the time was 98, and she died last year at almost 102. And I have a lot of her genes. And so my next thought was her, and I went, oh, okay, I'm going to be here for a really long time. So I could either be a victim and live a passively suicidal life, or I could transform the shit out of the worst experience that I will ever experience in my life. And I chose the transform the shit out of your life option. And that is the name of my company now. And so I got myself up off the floor by really, using all the tools that I've learned over the years, from feeling all my feelings, journaling, meditating. Eventually, I was able to incorporate exercise back into my life because that's such a mental health practice for me. And, as I started to get my footing again, I had to, decide, I had tons of clients, and that I worked with that I said, I can't do this anymore. And I have, and, because I'm going through this horrific time and I've gotten myself up off the floor, I can't sit across from somebody just living a fear-based victim life and not having that choice to actually do something. And so I know one of the questions was, I had to have the confidence in myself in order to clear house. And I got rid of 90% of my clients.
Wow.
And I started from scratch. And I now help women really transform their lives, not by the 20 years of experience that I have, not by the Ivy League education that I went from a community college to an Ivy League education, not by that, but by the last 4 years of my life, so that I could be a beacon of hope and inspiration and moving through life's hard stuff in order to really harness that inner confidence that you could live your fullest life. Wow. And so part of my work is uncovering what your unconscious fears are that are universal, that everybody has, like the fear of shining, the fear of not being liked, the fear of being too much of anything, the fear of really just coming into your own power, uncovering those, uncovering the drama triangle and how that keeps us locked into being a victim, and creating boundaries with people, teaching them also about, what their soul's purpose is. Because my belief is that we're all here for a purpose. And when we start to uncover all of the gunk and heal from it, that's when we start to shine and learn and grow about ourselves. And then the other aspect of what I do is teaching women in particular about what it's like to live as an empath.
Yes.
And I mean, I could jump into that now. I don't know.
I have 3 questions for you, and I want to hold that one for later based on what you just said. So I want you to talk more about the drama triangle, because anybody who's been through my programs knows what the drama triangle is, but I want them to hear it from you. That's step 1. And we'll come back to these. I'm going to come back to these, but I want you to come back to how you help women uncover their unconscious fears. Because I think because I think we kind of consciously know what we're afraid of, or what we think we're afraid of. So we're going to get juicy into that. And then, I want you to talk more about being an empath. Before you do that, I just, I don't want to gloss over the fact, and I hope that if you're watching this, not only have you gone through an incredible, painful, transformational event, you also had the courage to essentially blow up your business and just put the faith in the universe, God, spirit, whatever that is for you, knowing that the right people will come your way. So I would love if you could talk a little bit more, because I think a lot of women that listen to this in my group are so scared to leave something safe. And I'm sure psychotherapy for you felt quite safe. You had a lot of clients, people got referrals to you. Maybe you could weave in your true definition of confidence and how that gave you the courage and maybe just that inner sense of knowing of how you knew you could just say goodbye to an old model and start a whole new business with your soul's purpose and just do it confidently. Because I think sometimes we're so scared to do that. We're like, oh my gosh, if I take a leap, will the net appear?
I literally have chills just hearing you say that, because everything that you just said in that question is basically what I do. So, and how I walk women through it is, we all have fear. And the way that my definition of confidence is very similar to my definition of courage, which is feeling that fear and leaning into it and moving through it. Because on the other side of that is the courage and is the confidence. And it takes so much strength and so much inner strength and confidence to lean in to those fears and to allow yourself to be vulnerable, that it takes that fear and that vulnerability is your confidence and your courage. You just have to lean into it and take action with it instead of it holding you back. So I teach my clients about the hero's journey. And if you don't know what it is, it's basically every single movie, every single book you've ever written or read. Was a Freudian slip.
I know, right? That's good.
God,
That's
it's always back here. Damn it, I know I have to write it. But every book you've ever read, every movie you've ever seen is all based on the hero's journey. And we as humans are heroes in our own journey. And so there are a series of steps. There are like 12 steps of the hero's journey. I'm not going to go into all of them, but essentially the beginning is that like you live the status quo life. I lived a status quo life as a psychotherapist. I saw my clients. I came home, my body ached from sitting in a chair all day, but I came home and did that. That was my status quo. And the next thing that happens to the hero is there's a call to action. Something in your life just changed. And in my case, it was my son dying. And the very first thing that the hero does is not jump on the journey, but the first thing that hero does every single time is resist the call. I don't want to do this. The same time I was laying on the floor, I don't want to do this.
It's too hard. I heard my intuition wrong. That can't be right. That's not for me. I'm sure you could fill in the blank with
all of it. It's too painful. It's too scary. I don't want to do it. And so you stay in that comfort zone and resist the call until that it gets too constricting. That status quo and that complacency gets too constricting, and the fear of the unknown outweighs that complacency. And then that's when you take that first step on the path, and you get yourself up off the floor. Because everybody's had those, whether it's the bedroom floor or the bathroom floor or the bedroom floor, everybody's had the floor moment. I mean, that's why we call it rock bottom, right? No matter what, whether it's a death or an addiction, or, spending your entire life conforming to a patriarchal model that doesn't work for women, whatever it is. I mean, I know you call it your never again moments, and so I always believe you always have a choice. Always. Even you not making a choice is a choice.
No choice. Yep. You choose what you tolerate.
Right. And so it's hard. It's scary. And that fear If you all close your eyes right now and you felt fear in your body, and then you close your eyes and you feel excitement, it is the same visceral feeling in your body. We've been conditioned by society to think that that feeling inside of us is negative. And so what I challenge my clients to do is go, okay, what if we didn't have even the positive, the excitement? What if we had neither negative or positive? And what if that was our soul, our internal GPS going, go this way, move in this direction? Because we have to learn to quiet ourselves down so we could hear that part of ourselves. And we've also just been conditioned by society to be so externally focused. Well, if I get to this level, I'll be happy. Or if I make director, I'll be happy. Or if I make, whatever, CVP, I'll be happy. And we have that carrot just dangling.
Yep.
The happiness isn't outside. And I'm even resistant to even say happiness, because happiness is a mood. It's it's like a sunny day. Sometimes it's rainy, sometimes it's sunny.
My daughter just made cookies, so I feel happy.
Right. I've got sunshine in Seattle. This is fantastic, and so it's about learning how to quiet the external so that we could trust our bodies and trust the messages that our bodies are telling us, so that we could continue to move and grow and learn and live our soul's purpose confidently.
Yep. What advice would you give to women to help them hear their still small voice, their true voice? I recently did a survey with a lot of my followers and some of my, people that are follow me on social media or clients. And one of the things that was one of the most top rated answers of things that they wanted was to learn to know their true voice. Yes, they want to build their brand, but I think that that's just part of doing that, is knowing what you say your soul's purpose or your still small voice, your true voice, that true longing is telling you. That's the key ingredient. Otherwise, we end up chasing a title, a status, a salary, and we never really stop to ask why. Because I should, because it was a script, because it looked good, it's because my parents told me what to do. So what's your favorite piece of advice when you're telling women, how do they kind of know what their still small voice, their true voice sounds like?
That's a good question. So, I've got a whole lot of answers for that. So, one is, one of the biggest messages that my followers and my clients hear probably ad nauseum from me is baby steps. Because women, specifically, we've been conditioned to live these cookie cutter lives where we are conforming to corporate America, or being the happy wife and mother, or, and whatever our script is. And we've had decades of this, and so it's like, okay, you go to school and then you go to college, and, maybe you go to grad school, or maybe you get a job, and then at 27, you get married, and then you have kids, and and then the next thing you know, you're hitting these points, and you're like, when the hell when is this going to happen for me? And then you have the breakdown, which I like to call a breakthrough, which kind of unravels everything. So that being said, you have to just take baby steps, especially since you have decades of learning a specific thing, right? And so we have to unravel it slowly. And so, in part, because you don't want to kind of dive into a freezing swimming pool of change, because then you're just going to jump the fuck out and go, I'm not going in there, it's too cold. So we want to kind of go over to the low end, dip your toe in, and one of the things, I've got my 4 things. Like, you've got to learn how to meditate. If meditation scares the shit out of you, I get it. When I first started, I was like, I can't quiet this mind down. It doesn't shut up. It's
And
like
that's normal.
it's
That's what I want
totally
women to
normal.
know, is it's normal to stink at meditation for a very long time.
I've been doing it for 18 years. And guess what? 3/4 of the time, I'm like, what do I need to get at the supermarket?
I know. I know.
But it's what, and when I was like, okay, I know I have to learn how to do this in order to decrease my anxiety, in order to understand myself better. And so I just set my alarm for 2 minutes. I was like, I can do this for 2 minutes, even if I have the laundry list in my head. And it's about slowly building up the practice. It's like, if you want flat abs, you've got to do some fucking sit-ups. If you want a quiet mind and you want to like shift the focus and listen to that still quiet voice, you need to shut up this ego brain, you know, and part of that is building that muscle of quieting your mind. So just do it for 2 minutes. And I mean, now they have thousands of apps. Like my personal favorite is Insight Timer. And what I like about it is you could time it. If you only have 1 to 5 minutes, you can find meditations that are only 1 to 5 minutes. I also like to tell people who are starting their practice that go with the guided meditations, because it gives you something to focus on. And so and sometimes I do music, sometimes I do quiet, but when I first started out, it was really helpful to have somebody guide me through it. And again, it's just like building a muscle, and trusting that fear, because a lot of times that fear is there so that you could find that still quiet voice.
I totally agree. So let's talk a little bit more about unconscious fears. That was one of the 3 things I wanted to make sure people hear from you about. How do I know? Because I think I know what I'm scared of, but you talk about unconscious fears. So say more about that.
So again, we've been conditioned, right? By society, by where we live, by circumstances to be scared of things, right? And I'm not talking about these fears that stop you from going out onto oncoming traffic, or make out with a stranger during COVID. Like, like those are like common sense, like, let's not do that.
Those are biological fears for
those
safety,
are biological
for preservation. Yep,
fears.
Those are our animal instincts. Yes.
Right. But then as women in particular, but when I say unconscious, like, we have our conscious mind, which is our ego mind, which is our executive functioning, and we're in it 10% of the day. It's our personality, it's how we show up in the world, it's our logic, it's our analyzing, it's our rationalizing. All those skills are in your conscious mind. And then we have the subconscious mind, which we're in 90% of the time. And that's where our feelings live, our creativity, our spiritual connection. It's where all of our bodily functions live. So we don't have to tell our blood to flow or how to birth a baby, or, it's just all of those are living in our subconscious. And then we have the unconscious, which is just untapped potential. And so I use unconscious fears and universal fears interchangeably, because there's and I like to say almost universal fears, because everybody feels like that their fear is just theirs. And it's not. We all have the same fears. They just might, because of family of origin or because of life experiences or culture, some might be more heightened than others. But at the end of the day, like, we all have a fear of rejection, or being abandoned. We all have a fear of rejection or disappointment. We all have a fear of not being liked. And there's also, especially for women, a fear of shining.
Mhm.
What would
Yeah.
happen if I stepped in to my true power and started to shine? I
Mhm.
know that that was a big one for me based on my family of origin and my sibling relationship that I learned as a child, because we all have childhood wounds that teach us. Because another belief of mine is that life happens for us,
Mhm.
not to us.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
so when you switch those words for and to, your whole trajectory changes. Why
Mhm.
is life happening to me is a victim drama uh, experience. Why
Yes.
is
I
life
love that.
yeah, and why is life happening for me? Hey, why did my son have to die? What do I have to learn from it? What do I have to eventually teach people from it? But that didn't come until a couple of years ago. So it's like there's a reason for everything.
Mhm.
And when you start to look at life in that question of why is this happening for me, it's almost like an activating system.
Yes. And I would
I
love to hear more about, you talked a little bit about the drama triangle, because what I'm hearing, or the way I use it, is the switch from a victim, I call it a critic, to a creator, can be using that question. How is this happening for me instead of why is this happening to me? So do you want to talk a little bit more about how you use the drama triangle in your work, and maybe how it
oh,
helps people address those fears, or anything else that you've come in contact
absolutely. And so the drama triangle, how I use it is, I teach that everybody, I teach it under the umbrella of codependency.
with?
And the way that I see it, everybody's a little bit codependent. I look at it like a spectrum. We were all attached to our mother's umbilical cord. So we all are going to have attachment stuff, and we're all going to be a little bit codependency. And then based on family of origin and personal history, it's how codependent are you,
I'm going to
right?
draw the drama triangle for folks. We'll
Yeah,
keep
I might
talking.
even put someplace. So there are three ways that the victim, the unempowered individual, shows up.
Mm-hmm.
And one is the victim, which is the woe is me, why is life happening to me? Basically the Eeyore of that's so funny because I have the same thing, except I have it where the triangle, like it's
I've seen it both ways. So
yeah,
yeah, so
it's
you
so
guys,
funny. I'm like, oh, it's the same thing, but mine is upside down.
yes. And so if you're trying to go back and teach this to people, just know there's three roles. There's the victim,
Right.
there's the Eeyore. Yes.
And you could even have it on it's a triangle. It doesn't really matter which
Yeah.
way you draw it, right? And so you have the victim, which is like the Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh,
Yeah.
right? Why is life happening to me? Wah, wah, I'm stuck, I've got no control, I've got nothing, right? Like everything is out of my control, and I'm just going to be a victim of my life. And then you have the persecutor, who is there which is a mask for another type of victim, and they are the controller, they are the blamer, they are the shamer, they're the ones who are the rageaholics, and they use anger and fear to control in order to feel empowered.
Mm-hmm.
It is a false sense of power. It's
Mm-hmm.
not true empowerment. And then the third area is the rescuer. And a lot of women fall, again, in this country, because we've been conditioned to do so,
Mm-hmm.
fall under this category where, and this is the one I focus on a lot too, because it shows up the most, that, I'm going to give everything to you. I'm going to put my needs last. I'm going to put all of my energy into you. I'm going, it's like you complete me from that
Jerry
god
Maguire. Yeah.
awful fucking movie that I can't stand
Yeah.
because of this, because it's like we've been conditioned as women to go, oh, okay, I'm not going to fill myself up. I'm going to fill this person. I'm going to look to somebody else to fill myself up.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And if I rescue and I help help people all the time and I give, they're going to see that I'm worthy of love, and then I'm going to receive the love. But that never happens because it is another false sense of power. And so the goal is to unravel the way that the victims show up, so that you could disengage from them and live an empowered life. And so, I mean, the beauty is like, you could fall under one of the three and have, for me, the rescuer and the persecutor are the ones that show up the most. The beauty is that you could do this whole dance by yourself. You don't even need to do it with another person.
Yes.
And so
I always tell people your own inner critic can play all three roles. 1 minute, I'm feeling like the victim. Oh, poor me. The next minute, I'm my own persecutor. Like, you piece of, you know what? Like, why can't you get on board? Like, why can't you figure this out? You should be further ahead right now. What's wrong with you? And then I can be my own rescuer in my own head that says, oh, you should just go binge watch some Netflix. Life's been too hard. You should go soothe, go ignore. And it's just like, and it can be a place.
Yeah.
So
and you could do it all within like split seconds of each other too.
I know. And so at work, I think we see this, and you've talked a little bit about, I love how you talked about getting out of the victim mode and moving into the role of a creator by just switching the words for and to. Beautiful. How is this happening for me instead of how is happening this to me? I see rescueism. That a word? We just made it up.
Sure, I think so.
In the workplace, especially with leaders, men and women leaders alike, because they have what I call a superhero complex, where they believe their job as a leader is to, when people are struggling, people shouldn't struggle. Struggle is bad. And so I'm going to come in and fix everything for people. We see this as parents, when we don't want our kids to struggle, or we're upset, that our kids are upset and they shouldn't feel hard emotions. Rescuing comes in lots of forms, and that we want to overhelp. What's your biggest piece of advice for folks? Maybe one, to help them kind of have an aha moment going, oh crap, I think I'm rescuing right now. And then what do they do about it?
That's a good question. So, rescuing shows up. It doesn't just show up in your personal life. It shows up in the workplace. It shows up everywhere because it's really, it's like you hemorrhage codependency or rescuing, and some of the ways that it shows up, especially in the workplace, is either the workaholic or, that rescuer, or, I'm going to overwork and I'm going to overdo these things, and then I expect you to do the same thing as me, and then I'm going to get resentful that you don't, and so whether it's showing up at work or if it's showing up at home, because it's confusing, especially for women who go, well, I thought I was helping, and now you're telling me that I'm rescuing. Like, how do I know the difference? And so the number one way that you could tell the difference is this. Like, if you have a problem, Kelly, and that answer or solution to that problem comes from anybody else besides you, it's a rescue. You have to come up with the solution to yourself. That doesn't mean don't get feedback. You could talk to your people, and are you still there? Because you froze for a second. You could talk to your people. You could say like, look, you could brainstorm, you could ask for feedback, you could, do all the things, talk to your best friend, but at the end of the day, that decision ultimately has to come from you. So you could help, but make sure that if you're the one with the problem, you're the one coming up with the solution. And because what happens is, if I'm like, oh, hey, Kelly, you should do this, and then you do it, I just rescued you. You feel disempowered because you didn't come up with the solution. And then if you follow through on the thing that I just said that you should do, if it backfires, you're going to persecute me. So there it is. It's like, there's
I'm like, Nadia is a genius. Anytime I have a problem, I'm going to have Nadia solve it for me. I'm the victim. I can't come up with my solutions. Poor me. And like, you're on the hook all the time. And you're like, dang girl. Like,
Well, and then the other piece is that then you're competing. That inner critic starts to wake up and go, well, I can't come up with any of the problems. And she's really good at coming up with the solution. So I'm not as good as her, or whatever the story is.
exactly. That's where I see a lot
It,
of problems in the workplace is employee to manager, peer to peer is, yeah, we start relying on certain people at work because they're known rescuers. And so then we have a lot of people who just kind of sit around and throw up their hands and say, well, I tried everything. There's nothing else I can do. No, we've just kind of robbed people of, allowing them to do it themselves.
well, and going back to what you were saying about like, nobody wants to see anybody struggle. Like, we have to struggle in
Yes.
order to grow.
That is
And
not a strong enough message right now. I mean,
we come into the world, the first thing we do is go through a birth canal or have, that it's like, that's our first struggle. That's our first human struggle,
Yes.
And so, but, going back to, when you're rescuing somebody,
Mm-hmm.
energetically, what you are saying to that person is, I don't believe in you.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that you're strong enough
Mm-hmm.
or capable enough or have enough confidence or inner strength to figure this out on your own. So I'm going to do it for you. That's what you're saying.
Exactly. How disempowering. And here's what I would love for you to talk about next as we kind of wrap everything up, because you have so many gifts, and I'm going to tell everybody where they can go follow you, because they're probably just like itching right now to be like, how do I get more of this woman? So, but before I let you off the hook, I want you to talk about something that's been deeply impactful for me. I want you to talk about empaths. And for some people, this is going to be the first time they've ever even heard this word, or they might think of the word empathy, like, oh, I can give empathy. No. I want you to talk about what is an empath. Maybe what are 3 or 4 clues that we know if we're an empath? And then of course, then I'll tell them, or you can tell them where they can go take a quiz. And why is knowing that important? Like, why should I care? Why is this a thing?
I love this question. And I have to share that when I was talking with you about it, you didn't think you were an empath. And then now you got the book, and now you're like, oh my God.
I know. Because I thought, and a lot of women think, well, if I'm not naturally empathetic, or if I'm not one of those like super feeling type of people, and if you've done your Myers-Briggs, you guys know that I'm an INTJ. If you've done an Enneagram, I'm a 1. So that might naturally lead you to think, oh, well, she's more of a rational problem solver. She's not an empath. And that's actually not true.
So, okay, so just an overview of what an empath is. It's so we have, as humans, different ways that we walk through life. So if you're an artist, you may be super visual, or if you are a chef, you might be gustatory, or if you're tactile, you might be a massage therapist, or something with your hands. So if you're an empath, you move through the world feeling and sensing other people. And this might sound woo-woo to you, but the brain science behind it is this. So we have a thing called the mirror neuron system in our brain. And that part of our brain is responsible for compassion. It's responsible for connection and empathy. And so everybody has a mirror neuron system. If you are an empath, your mirror neuron system is hyperactive. And fun fact, if it is underactive, that's the sociopath.
Right. I love that you talk about everything on a spectrum, because I think our minds tend to go to either am or I'm not. No, it's like a bell-shaped curve, right?
Right. And so everything is a bell-shaped curve
I know.
in
My
my
old
world.
bosses say we live on a bell-shaped curve only everywhere we go.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And so an empath, it's like you are literally feeling other people's feelings.
Mhm.
So that is generally the overall umbrella of it. There are some people who um, are what they call physical empaths. And so if you have a migraine and I, am in contact with you, I start to get a headache. And so, but generally you're picking up on other people's feelings. So if you have like 5 fingers, an empath has like 50. And so there's a highly sensitive person, and then there's an empath. The highly sensitive person has is highly sensitive, but you are sensitive to sounds. So one of the things, like my dog licking his paw, which luckily he's not doing right now because he's sitting right there,
Yes.
would drive me nuts.
Yes.
Or you hear, like, the bird that's like a block away. You see things that other people don't see, like all the little details. Your sense of smell is off the charts.
Touch for certain fabrics too, right?
I cannot wear, I mean, God bless the people that could wear the high heels and jeans and the jackets and do the things. And I know corporate America is all about that, but it's just like, I can't be in uncomfortable clothes because it would just drive me batty, quite honestly. I have to be comfortable. And so it's like you have your 5 senses that are heightened with being a highly sensitive person or an HSP. Then there's the empath, which is a combination of the highly sensitive person and that sixth sense of feeling and intuiting your way through life. And so I have found that with Myers-Briggs, people who show up as INs or NFs are more than likely empaths as well. So I'm an ENFP. Empaths are probably 80% of them are actually introverted. And so I'm even a rarer breed where I'm an extroverted empath. But it's, we're highly intuitive. We need to have a lot of alone time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're finding that you're in a group of people and you're getting frazzled, or even like everything that's going on today with, COVID and, the way of the world, even watching the news is going to affect you on an emotional level, even if you're a T when it comes to the Myers-Briggs.
And here's some things that like my women tell me, and I personally experienced that I didn't know it was because I was an empath. So for instance, at work, and how this impacts this is why this is so groundbreaking for me, because this is like totally impactful to my own personal level of confidence. Because step one, like before I knew about this whole empath thing, I didn't know that I was taking on other people's emotions. And I didn't know what emotions were mine and what emotions were theirs. And so because like there was like this fusion of emotion, and I lived in this emotional state, especially when there was conflict, which there's conflict at work, like I couldn't step back into my true voice because I didn't have the tools. Like I didn't have the tools to give myself kind of a shield.
So the number one thing that you could do, and so basically if you're an empath, you're an emotional sponge. And so you could be in a totally fine room and then walk into a room where there's conflict, and all of a sudden it's like, and all of a sudden you're feeling all of it, and it's not even yours, and if you're walking through life not knowing that you're an empath, it's just like you've got globs of stuff that's just like I always like, it's like a dirty dish sponge that you don't want to use anymore, right? And so one way, if you're feeling like agitated or sad, or, ask yourself, is this mine?
Ooh, that's a great question for them to ask.
Because if you, and then you sit and you go, okay, is this mine? Like, why am I feeling angsty, or why am I feeling agitated? And be curious about it. And so if the answer is no, it's not, it's this conflict that's going on in the office, then you have that choice, because we always have the choice. Do I want to take it on? And if it's not yours, why the fuck do you want to take it on?
I love it. Because then you'll step in and rescue and fix stuff that isn't yours.
Right. Right. And then be persecuted for it.
I know.
And then you feel victimized. So it's all wrapped up, And so that's when you have to, ask yourself, is this mine? And if it's not, then take a deep breath, go outside, and because nature is an empath's best friend, and if it is yours,
still go outside.
Still go outside and take the deep breath and walk around the block or do whatever you can. But if it is yours, then go, okay, then what do I do with it? Do I, and then you process it, and then you hopefully communicate effectively to the person that you need to communicate with, but the number one question is this mine?
I love it. I love it. I'm sure people have like a ton of other questions, and I want them to go take the quiz, which I'm going to have you tell them in a second, just to kind of wrap this whole thing up before we talk about how they can go find all your amazing work. What would be one piece of advice from your own experience to help women live and move more confidently through the world?
Honestly, I would say feel the fear and do it anyway.
That's awesome.
Take the baby steps. And, I'm a huge advocate for soul care. I stopped calling it self-care because I can't stand that phrase anymore because it's so overused. Like, this is about soul care. How do you fill yourself up? For me, like I said, it's meditation, it's journaling, it's exercise, moving your body, because we have to move our body. Our bodies were meant to move, and feeling all of our feelings. Those are like my 4 core soul care, tips that I could give people. But it's like, you set up a morning practice, get up early before your family or your kids, or if you're single, before all your Zoom calls, and create the space that is sacred to you so that you could fill yourself up, so you could give people the best of you and not what's left of you.
I love it. I love it. Sacred space is so important. And I give that exercise to a lot of people who come through my programs
And alone time.
Yes.
Especially for empaths.
Yes. Alone
Desensitization.
The other day I had to just go leave, and I just excused myself from my family. And I just said, I'm going to go spend some time in the bedroom. It was raining that day. I didn't do anything. I just sat there with my eyes closed, and the rain was just like so calming. And I'm like, you know what? It's just amazing what 20 minutes of that, even 5 minutes, I felt.
Even 5. I did that the other day. We had, I had like gone to the supermarket, and then, there was just a lot of energy. And I just was like, I have to go into the bedroom. And I went I shut the door. I put on Insight Timer. I have a 5-minute meditation that I love. And I just played it. And it just calmed my whole nervous system.
Yes, and I love it, because a 5-minute Insight Timer we can do at work, in between Zoom meetings, when we're out at lunch, when we're taking a walk, whatever that looks like.
And then one thing that I always like to share with people when it comes to fear is that fear shows up in 2 ways in your body: the parasympathetic nervous system and the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is your pits are sweating, your heart is beating, you feel stuttered or stammered in your speech. You get, some people get like the red blotches, and it's physiologically your amygdala, your fear center has been activated. And since it's the oldest part of your brain, it thinks that it's getting chased by a saber-toothed tiger, and you can't consciously talk your way out of it. So if you all of a sudden got like, oh shit, like layoffs might be happening, all of a sudden your sympathetic nervous system goes into action. And so you have to work physiologically with it. So if you are getting hot, you get an ice pack or get some ice water, because that ice is literally cooling your body down and sending a message to your brain that you're no longer getting chased by the saber-toothed tiger or layoffs or whatever, or can I ever leave corporate? And so it's there to keep you safe. But if you have ice water, it will literally
love it.
chill
Take
you out so you
a
get
big
back.
presentation, because I don't know about you, but I felt that way going into like high stakes events. That's a great tip.
Oh, absolutely. And conversely, if you go into the freeze mode, which is, because that's the fight or flight, which is the parasympathetic nervous system, is the freeze mode, your body gets cold and you shut down and you kind of like a zombie, you know? And so with that, you want to do anything that's warming, like, you know, a blanket or herbal tea or something to, you know, I mean, I literally have a heating blanket on my bed, like 10
no
months
shame.
out of the year, you know? And I vacillate between the two. So big trauma, I go into shock. I go into the cold, the parasympathetic, and I get cold and I want to shut down. But like things like, oh yeah, I'm going to, you know, go speak. And it's like, all of a sudden I'm like, you know, hot and all the things. So ice water, when you're feeling that way, it will calm you down literally, and it'll get you back into your executive functioning. And conversely, you know, warm tea or warm water.
That. It's such a simple tip that like you can do it at the office and you can do it at home. It's so good. So I know people are like, oh my gosh, I want to know if I'm an empath. I want to know about fears. I want to know about all these things. Tell people where they can find you and where that quiz is, that Are You an Empath quiz they can take.
Okay, so the best place to go find me and take the quiz is on my website, which is nadiaahrens.com, NadiaAhrens. And the quiz is on there. I also have a free Facebook tribe where I give tons of content. I do Monday Facebook Lives, and that is Transform the Shit Out of Your Life Tribe. And you can also follow me on Instagram, Nadia Ahrens, and on Facebook, Nadia Ahrens Transformational Life Coaching. And I also have a 6-week course coming up in September. It's the Soul Care 6-pack, and it teaches you all of these nuggets just broken out in weekly formats. And the next one's in September. And then I have another program starting in October, which is all about the chakra system and the psychological, emotional, physical, and spiritual aspects of each. So that's
wealth of stuff, because we didn't even get to that today. I love it so much. You're like
so much stuff.
Just keeps I love it. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I know that women are going to walk away with so many practical tips. I think not only just to understand how they respond in certain situations that we encounter, not every single day, but also just even some things that they can do to like move through them with more confidence, whether it's as simple as bringing ice water into a high stakes situation when you know you might get revved up, to just understanding how you respond in the face of fear, and knowing that when life calls you to do really big, hard things, we're going to resist. But that's a great place to listen to your still small voice. So thank you so much for all of your wonderful wisdom and time. And I know everybody will deeply appreciate it. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you for having me, Kelly. It was awesome.
You're welcome.